Hey everybody, it's Noah, Editor-in-Chief here at the ARKTOBER Network, back with another Flashback Friday episode for you. Getting a little sick of hearing myself and Gavin on all of these, as I'm sure some of you are, so I decided to change it up finally. We're going to hear from the Brothers Blanchard this week, and we're going back to Woodsboro, as it were. This is the Gale Weathers Book Club, Episode 1, discussing the 1996 classic Scream. Now, some of you are probably familiar with this series. Some of you, this may be your introduction to the Brothers Blanchard. These are our cousins, Matthew and Patrick, who reside in Virginia, and they have done many limited series for us, most of which are available on the Movie Arc feed. They covered the Halloween franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Friday the 13th. The list goes on and on. There's even some Hatchet love for you guys, and some Evil Dead as well. And they may even have a few others in the works for our annual ARKTOBER celebration. But more on that when we actually get to the fall and have some more details for you. But yeah, so if you enjoy the Brothers Blanchard, as I'm sure you will, they have tons of podcasts that you can check out. Again, most of those on the Movie Arc feed. Matthew has his own separate feed, the 4-color arc, which has been a little dormant for a bit, but there's some episodes waiting for you there. I guest on a couple, Patrick's on a couple as well, and there's a ton of all Blanchard episodes as well, where we got the two sets of cousins, myself, Gavin, Matt, and Pat, and those are a lot of fun as well, most of which you can find, again, on the Movie Arc feed, which is available on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get podcasts, etc. While you're there, if you're over on iTunes, maybe you can rate and review us, help us get a little bit closer to our goal of becoming a Rotten Tomatoes approved outlet. That would be cool. But at the very least, just give it a listen. Maybe this will inspire you to check out some older episodes in the feed. And I do promise you will be hearing from the Brothers Blanchard again very, very soon, whether in the form of a flashback episode or possibly some new content. We'll see what happens. But until next time, when Gavin and I will be back with a new 2x2 retro review, for now, let's take it back to 1996 and go back to Woodsboro with Scream and the Gale Weathers Book Club, Episode 1. Take it away, the Brothers Blanchard.
I hear you like horror movies.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Gale Weathers Book Club, the continuing saga of the Brothers Blanchard's deep dives into horror franchises where we pay the late fees so you don't have to. I'm your host, Patrick J. Blanchard, and with me on this endeavor as we delve into the Scream franchise is, of course, my co-host,
Matthew J. Blanchard, the other half of the Brothers Blanchard. And the other person stuck here going through these horror movies. It's starting to feel daunting. Like, there's so many.
There are.
We've been talking about slasher movies since April?
Yes.
April of 2018. It's now November of 2018.
That's right.
We've done a bunch of these. If you've been following us all summer long now, apparently, we have gone through the Friday the 13th franchise. We've gone through the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We've gone through the Hatchet franchise, which is a bit of a departure, but cool. Here's what it is. And we just did probably the most massive project we're going to do in podcast land. We just dropped a week-long mega podcast about the Halloween franchise.
True. And what do you follow Halloween up with?
Well, I think you follow up Halloween. Well, I think you follow up Halloween Friday the 13th. But I think you follow up Halloween by talking about something that is definitely in the spirit of Halloween. And I think in this particular instance, this is the franchise that we have talked about off and on throughout the conversations about all the other franchises we've talked about.
Yes.
Like, Scream came up in our conversation about the Fridays. It came up in our conversation about the Nightmares. It came up, oddly enough, in our conversation about the Hatchets. and it came up a bunch while we were talking about Halloween. This is the elephant in the room. This is the one we've been talking around since April.
It's Scream.
It's
the reason I'm in this room.
Well, I mean, I feel like you'd be in this room without Scream.
I don't know, because we're specifically in this room to talk about Scream. And no Scream, no talking.
Yeah, but I mean, it's my room, and I think you'd still be welcome.
Yeah.
And I think there'd still be an excuse for you to come over. We didn't have to talk about movies. But I see your point. Yeah, very much so. I would not be half the horror fan that I am today if not for Scream. And, you know, if you hear the boys tell it, if you hear the Blanchard brothers tell it, our enjoyment of Halloween that they saw at a young age influenced them.
Right.
So in a way, Scream influenced them through us.
Yes. So
Scream is kind of the reason this whole podcast network exists. Like, none of us would be here without this franchise. I mean, we credit Halloween with bringing this whole thing together because we spawn off of the Carpenter Revisited podcast that Gavin and Noah did. But if their love of Carpenter owes anything to our love of Carpenter owes everything to Scream.
I wouldn't have continued in horror without Scream.
Yeah.
I was watching horror. It was cool. I saw Scream, and it's one of those moments where, as a film fan, that you go into the theater and you come out. For me, I came out a changed person. There's who I was before Scream, and there's who I am after Scream.
Gotcha. Yeah. I told the story on the Nightmare podcast about why I avoided horror movies, because I had this experience where Freddy Krueger fucking terrified me for a decade plus. Actually just about a decade. It was like, 6 or 7 to about 16, 17. So yeah, it was about a decade. And it was Scream that opened the floodgate and allowed me to come back to horror movies. So literally, it wasn't like, I wouldn't have continued. I would not have watched horror movies if not for the fact that I was hanging out at Kevin Murphy's house and we were watching Scream. We rented Scream, and everybody was like, no, we're going to watch that. And I was like, do I tell them I don't like scary movies? Do I own up to being a pussy? Or do I just sit down and watch this movie? I just sat down and watched the movie, and it was fantastic.
See, mine was, I was in college, and I was at a college party, and it was a college party filled with theater majors. Yeah. And theater majors get very buoyant and excited about things. Right. Sometimes the stereotypes about us are true. Right. So we're sitting there at a party, and we're talking about horror movies. And somebody says, somebody should make a movie that ties all the stuff that we know about horror movies together. Right. Like, we've been watching horror movies since we were little kids. Except for you, Patrick, because you just started watching them. I'm like, oh, you're right.
Right. Somebody should make a movie from the perspective of a fan.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm charging through franchises. I've already seen the Halloweens up to that point. No, I hadn't. I was watching them. I was watching the Fridays. I was taking notes. I was like, what are some things that are themes that run through? There's the final girl. What makes her the final girl? What causes deaths? Looking at it from that perspective. Why are you running up the stairs when you should be running out the front door?
All the questions that Kevin Williamson rightly asks in this script, and all the things that Kevin weaves throughout this screenplay. Yes, so that must have been like a kick in the fucking teeth. I'm doing research, trying to tell this kind of story. A motherfucker just made this movie.
Well, see, and then I went in and watched the movie, and I was like, I'm too late.
I missed my fucking window.
Not knowing the history of the movie, because I went and seen the movie, knowing that he started writing the script in '94. Right. I started charging through in fall of '96.
So you were already too fucking late.
I was already too late, but I didn't know it. Right. I'm sitting there, I'm watching movies, taking notes, and then I go see Scream. Hearing about Scream, the advertising campaign, which strongly featured Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
exclusively. And me, being born in 1975, being the same age as Drew Barrymore,
Right.
you know, having been a fan of Drew Barrymore since E.T.,
Right. You obviously needed to be a part of this.
I needed to see this movie.
Yeah, sure.
And then I did.
See, I came to it a little later. I didn't see it till it was on home video.
I saw it 5 days after it opened on Christmas.
But I saw Scream 2 the day it opened.
Yes.
Because Scream 1 converted me to a fan very, very quickly. So I guess we should probably start at the beginning, which is...
A phone call?
Well, usually we give a little background about the movie before we dive right into the plot.
Yeah, I guess we could go that route, you know.
Yeah, the same thing we've been doing for the last...
I'm trying to innovate here.
Oh, it's innovation to give them new details.
Yes.
We'll just... This is what we do on our podcast now. We just summarize a movie, and then we tell you what kills were good.
I mean, it cuts down on time.
It does cut down on time, but, it also cuts down on the content that we create on our own.
So, Kevin Williamson based a lot of this... not based, but there was a
Was
real...
inspired
by a real-life serial killer.
named the Gainesville Ripper in
Yes.
Gainesville, Florida. Basically, Kevin Williamson was stuck in a house watching Dateline. And, to be perfectly honest with you, I've watched some Dateline, mysteries where they explore an actual killing and been like, that'd make a good movie. Well, that's what Kevin Williamson did.
Apocryphally, and I don't know, I just found out, the other inspiration is while he was watching this Dateline and trapped in the house, he went upstairs and found an open window. And it was like...
See, I've never actually heard that. What I do know is that he had a script waiting to be sold that was under contract at 2 different places, and that was his script for Killing Mrs. Tingle.
Released as Teaching Mrs. Tingle many years later. 'Cause
Many
it got caught up in production hell.
Yes.
Ask us about that sometime in 2020, and we'll do a Teaching Mrs. Tingle podcast.
Oof, 2020.
Yeah.
So not next year.
No.
Year after.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So he has Teaching Mrs. Tingle, and he needs to pay his rent. Like he's gotta fucking pay rent, and he has this idea to sort of just make a referential horror movie. And he's got this Gainesville Ripper inspiration moment about a killer who calls the person he's going to kill. Which is that's what really happened. That's the germ that he took away from it. So he locks himself in a room for 3 days to write a script to sell. That's the whole point. It's not, I'm writing a script to innovate. I'm writing a script to tell the kind of horror movie I want to tell.
Although he does.
Although that's in there. It's certainly in there. But it's not the motivation. The motivation is,
I need to pay rent.
I need to turn a script around real fucking fast. So I got to write something I can get out there. I can sell. So I'm gonna take 3 days. I'm gonna write this script, and I'm gonna flesh out treatments for 2 more. So it's a trilogy of horror movies. Anybody who wants to cash in on horror movies will buy this because it's ready-made.
Yep.
Sequels are done. He puts it up for sale, and within 24 hours of being on the market, there's a fucking bidding war.
Yes.
Between Oliver Stone, New Line, and Miramax. Just grappling to get this script. He has been negotiating the process of Teaching Mrs. Tingle for years at this point.
Yes.
But Scream, scary movie, as it was originally called, hits the market, just causes a splash, and immediately causes this fucking bidding war. And at the end of the day...
Oh my God, the 90s were a great place.
Right? You could just have an idea and people would be like, I like you. Give me that idea. Here's millions. And at the end of the day, the movie ended up at Miramax.
Yeah.
Under Dimension, under Bob Weinstein. And it was that quick. It was boom, boom, boom. He had a thing going. He knew who he wanted to direct it. Well, he had two ideas. The first one was not going to happen, which was himself.
Yes.
And the second was a name he threw out, and that name was Wes fucking Craven.
Wes, at this point, he was tied up in pre-production on a movie called The Haunting, a remake,
Yes.
I believe. And he turned it down.
Yep.
Initially. And this
Because it was too violent.
ultimately.
ultimately.
Also, Wes was considering trying to get out of the genre.
Yes, he was.
So this is the point where we're tying back into Camp Crystal Lake, revisited, because for a while there, the director of Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, was attached.
Yep.
He was, or in negotiation, not attached. And Williamson, when he was talking with him, said, Friday the 13th Part 6 was one of my inspirations because all of the meta-ness in that movie, which I then applied here. That same tongue-in-cheek feel that you had in your movie, I wanted to have in my script. But then that was not a directorial decision that Dimension decided to go.
Not at all. Dimension wants to cast up, and they want to do the same thing with the director. They want an up-and-comer or a name, right? So while he was briefly on the list, there was never any real traction for that. Not getting Wes. There's a rumor, that unconfirmed, that Bob Weinstein did reach out to the other major auteur, who is referenced heavily in this film, and was flatly told no. But neither Bob Weinstein nor John Carpenter confirmed that Carpenter was solicited for this. The names we know that were actually brought in, offered deals, almost took it, and then it fell apart, are as follows. We've got Danny Boyle, Robert Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez, I hear, is one of those people who didn't get the vision that they wanted, and just like, oh, good choice, and not going that way.
Sam Raimi.
Yep.
And George Romero.
Yep.
Like, they went classic. Let's go to George Romero. He invented this fucking genre in a way. So, and all of these people either want too much, want to do other things, don't get Kevin's vision, don't get Bob Weinstein's vision, can't compromise between the two, don't have anything going.
And then I hear, at this point, the script gets in the hands of one Gertie from E.T.
Indeed.
One Drew Barrymore, who goes out of her way to get attached to the project.
Yep.
Because she liked the script that much.
And it's the second she's involved, somebody else takes a second look. And that's when Wes Craven goes, oh, you know what? I could do this. Yeah, I can do this. This would be a good swan song if I actually want to leave.
Yep.
It would be a good sort of summation of my thoughts on the genre. It would cater to sort of the meta nature of what I wanted to do with the movie that just flopped. In the personage of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which came out and did not hit the way he wanted.
I know, and also because there was a movie in between that and Scream.
Yes.
Vampire in Brooklyn, which did not hit at all. So Wes is also desperately in need. Once again, as we have talked throughout time, since Friday the 13th, Camp Crystal Lake Revisited, here's Wes Craven, and he needs a hit.
Yep. And he thinks maybe this one will do it. And he's not wrong.
He's not wrong
because
at
this
all.
movie hits for him in a big bad way. I did go through sort of a laundry list of the people who could have been here. Because when you start looking at the almost wers in this film, it's fascinating.
Well, even the first almost where we can talk about was in the movie.
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore, when she attached herself, and they were like, "Yeah, we're going with Drew." Drew was the lead. Drew was Sidney Prescott.
Yep. And she chose because she did have a producerial credit on this, right? I thought no, she didn't take it. But I mean, Wes maintains that she could have taken one had she wanted.
I mean,
because she helped develop the project.
And she's 21 at this point, because I know, because she and I are born the same year.
So she is Sidney Prescott, and she rightly makes the call that it would be more shocking if she's Casey Becker, who has the brilliant introductory death scene that sets the tone for this movie.
Everything old is new again. She's like, let's psycho this up. That was not the exact quote, but at the time, all the quotes, she was talking about Psycho.
Now, once she passes on actually being Sidney Prescott, well, then Kevin Williamson urges them to offer the role to his preferred Sidney Prescott, who's a little bit older. Molly Ringwald is almost Sidney Prescott at almost 30. And she passes because she's like, I'm 28 years old.
Yeah.
I don't think I should play high schooler again. And she passes. And then we get this sort of laundry list of actors who almost fill certain roles. Now, there are some roles that, sit open, and once somebody's in it, they didn't look at anybody else.
Yeah.
But let's start at the top. Okay. So Sidney Prescott, we've got Drew Barrymore, we've got Molly Ringwald, Melissa Joan Hart, Brittany Murphy,
Yep.
Reese Witherspoon, AJ Langer, and Alicia Witt.
Oh my God! It's like it's 1996 in this house.
It is. It totally is.
Alyssa Witt, who goes on to be the lead in Urban Legend.
And, Melissa Joan Hart, who Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I mean, it's what we got here. Then we've got all the alternate Billies. Okay. Who include a laundry list of names, but also the rest of the male cast of the actual movie.
Yeah.
Because David Arquette, he was the one who actually was cast as we went through this.
Yeah.
Like, all the other names were like, yeah, they were considered.
Yeah.
David Arquette was offered the fucking role and was like, I don't want that. I want to be Dewey.
But Dewey's our classic macho buff guy.
Yeah, I want that.
But you can't do that.
I can do that.
You can't do that.
I can do it. I can give it a different youthful energy. And Wes Craven said, sure. But he was fucking Billy Loomis. Boom. So yeah, that's the big one. Matthew Lillard almost was Billy. He wasn't cast.
Well, Matthew Lillard is his own story in and of itself. He wasn't even in there to audition.
He was taking his girlfriend to an audition. He wasn't auditioning for this role, and the casting director was like, hey, read for this. And it was Scream, and he read for Billy, and they were like, we like him for this. And he was like, okay, I like this character? And they were like, wait, Stu? Okay. And then nobody else read for Stu. Like, Matthew Lillard goes, I would like to be Stu Macher. And they're like, sold.
I mean, that doesn't happen. That's not a real life thing. That's a storied Hollywood moment.
Right? I mean, but it's the same thing that we've got with Dewey, basically.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know who else read for Dewey. We got a laundry list of people who read for Billy. We got a short list of people who read for Randy.
Yeah.
Nobody read for Stu because one of the first guys in for Billy goes, I want to be Stu.
I want to be Stu. I like those lines.
and got the role. Beyond those guys, though, Joaquin Phoenix.
Okay.
Both Lois and Clark, Jimmy Olsen's,
Ooh.
Justin Whalen, and Michael Landis.
I did not know about Landis.
Yeah. And the big one, Ben Affleck.
Little
Old, but he was almost Billy Loomis. And since we're talking about Ben Affleck, his Kevin Smith Askewniverse friend, Jason Lee, read for the role of Randy.
Also too old.
Breckin Meyer took a stab at Randy Meeks. So, yeah. Breckin Meyer almost in a lot of movies from 1994 to 1998. Like almost in so many movies.
And twice beaten out by people with little to no experience that the studio did not want. But the director's like, no, that is what I want.
Yeah, but both times he's beaten out by somebody with little to no experience. Jason Lee is there as well.
Yes.
I love that. Jason Lee is Breckin Meyer's bad luck charm. Tatum, Rebecca Gayheart read for Tatum.
Okay.
As did Alicia Silverstone,
I did not know about Alicia.
who also will read again for a role in the next movie, in Scream 2, that she won't take.
Please tell me it's the one that Rebecca Gayheart took.
No. Damn it. No, it's the one that Sarah Michelle Gellar took.
Okay.
Gale Weathers was offered to Janine Garofalo. This is 1996.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's Garofalo times.
it's Garofalo time. Much like the sort of Kevin Smith Chasing Amy casting story, where it's like, no, we want Jon Stewart, David Schwimmer, and Janine Garofalo. Those are the people who have overall deals with Miramax at this point in time. So Miramax tries to put them in fucking everything, including Scream, because Janine Garofalo is offered the role of Gale Weathers. I'm sure it doesn't say David Schwimmer was offered a role in Scream. I guarantee you, David Schwimmer was offered a fucking role in Scream.
Hey, but speaking of David Schwimmer,
Speaking of David Schwimmer,
we can bring up Courtney Cox. Courtney
who
Cox
actually is the Gale Weathers, not Brooke Shields or Janine Garofalo or Elizabeth Berkley, who is flat out told no.
Oh, well, the stigma of showgirls has settled.
Yes.
But Courtney Cox is on Friends.
Mm-hmm.
She plays Monica Geller. She's the friendliest of the friends and is looking to be seen as something else. And she reads the script and she's like, this is an amazing bitch character.
I would like to be this.
I would like to be this. Please cast me. And they're like, Monica, no. You're Monica Geller. You are the friendliest friend.
Yep.
And she's like, no, I can do this. And they're like, no. It's just through sheer tenacity that she keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And finally, she gets the part.
And she wears them down. And so we then end up with, you know, the guys who all read for Billy filling out the male cast. And then no one who had initially been looked at coming in and filling the female roles after the fact. Because Nev Campbell didn't audition.
No.
She got offered the role by Wes Craven. Who
Wes,
was like,
Wes is,
I've seen your show.
I like Party of Five. You can be vulnerable.
And offered her the role, and she was like, okay. I don't like horror movies, though. I don't like to be scared.
However,
Almost said no because she doesn't like horror movies.
But from what I understand, what swayed it is, I do like the idea of being a lead in a motion picture.
Yes. So we have this massive. Everyone in Hollywood wanted to be in this goddamn movie, and I guarantee you, for all the people we have names for, there are others who auditioned for Scream, who we've never heard that they did, but I guarantee you they did.
So we've got her for Sydney now.
Yep.
But we don't have a Billy.
We don't have a Billy.
Now the interesting thing though is somebody read for Billy who had just been in a movie with Neve Campbell and has some chemistry with her because they were in a movie together.
Yep, this is true.
Well, let's cast that guy.
Oh, wait, that guy. Why that guy? Why does that guy ring a bell? Holy crap, he looks like Johnny Depp.
Oh my God, does Skeet Ulrich look like Johnny Depp?
And both Wes Craven and Skeet Ulrich have said he was cast in this movie because he looked like Johnny Depp.
Yep.
Because Wes Craven was like, he looks like Glenn from Nightmare.
And then after that,
which is genius.
So he and Neve, because they'd worked on the other film, The Craft, together, they already have a rapport. So it led to a more believable relationship between the two of them.
Yes, it did. Definitely.
It allowed them to hit the ground running because they needed to hit the ground running with this.
Close call. Totally. Definitely hit the ground running. And this is a real short turnaround kind of film.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna shoot in what is it, like 8 weeks or so. So they gotta scout locations fast.
We haven't even mentioned who got the Tatum and the Randy role yet.
Well, we don't need to mention who got the role.
Okay.
We know who got the role. If you're listening to a podcast about Scream, you know that Jamie Kennedy is Randy Meeks.
Okay.
You know that Rose McGowan. Like, come on, man. Crazy talk.
But yeah, so they're going to shoot in April, and they have a December release date.
Yes.
And there's a bit of controversy.
There's a couple of controversies.
At the beginning of shooting, whether they can use a location.
Well, before we even get to the controversy or whether or not they can use a location, they start looking to find the best tax break locations to shoot in.
Oh yes.
Because Bob Weinstein's like, get your asses to Canada. And Wes Craven's like, I am not fucking shooting in Canada.
Yeah.
So Wes Craven is like, I'll walk from this picture if you make me shoot in Canada.
Yeah.
And Bob Weinstein was like, all right, don't shoot in Canada. You're shooting in fucking North Carolina.
I'm not shooting North Carolina because none of those locations are appropriate.
Yep.
Like, we would actually have to build out in North Carolina, thereby spending more than the amount that we would save.
All right. Then I want you to go look at this sleepy little college town in Atlanta. And I want you to shoot there, right? In Georgia, outside of Atlanta. I want you to shoot there.
Okay, I'll go take a look.
I'll go look at your fucking college. Yeah, it's a great location. I don't want to shoot here. I want to shoot in Los Angeles.
No, we're not shooting in Los Angeles.
All right.
This is 1996. It's too expensive.
All right, then let me shoot in Northern California.
Well, you can keep everything under 14 million. Go right ahead.
And boom, there we are. So very quickly we go from shoot in Vancouver to shoot in North Carolina to shoot in Georgia, which I guarantee you will get back to that.
Well, yeah.
Spoiler alert, Scream 2 will use the locations that Miramax wanted to shoot Scream 1 in. Which is it's an amazing little twist.
Yeah.
But amazing double twist Producer / writer Kevin Williamson will use those North Carolina locations also within a year and a half. Literally, they looked at Wilmington, North Carolina.
Folks, this all ties in. If you listen,
Oh, it does. It totally does.
And with us, if you've been following our podcast,
Oh, God,
we
no.
right now are talking about Dawson's
fucking
Creek.
Creek. Yes, we are. We are talking about Dawson's Creek.
If you want a Dawson's Creek podcast, write in.
Right in. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope.
It's 1996, right? You write in, right?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I have a bulletin board. You can go there.
Yeah, check us out on our BBS.
Don't we have an AOL homepage?
Yes, we totally do. It's
It's 1996.
AOL.com/podcast/ Brothers Blanchard /ARKTOBER.
Don't go there. Really, don't go there.
If you can find it, if there's something there, fucking tell me.
Yeah.
But yes, so we end up shooting in Northern California. And, you know, we end up using some pretty storied locations. Like, the Becker house is right across the street from the house where they shot Cujo. You know, there's a lot going on in this town they're shooting in.
The Riley house is next to the Pollyanna house.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a lot of stuff is shot in this area of NorCal. And we've got the controversy you're talking about,
Yes.
which is it's always the most fascinating thing when you look at the credits. If you're a credit watcher,
Yeah.
you've always, if you didn't research this, I don't know why you didn't, because end credits, absolutely no thanks at all to the Santa Rosa County School Board.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is this?
Well, you see, they secured the location for the high school scenes to shoot at Santa Rosa High School. But then it got word out on what movie was actually shooting there. Mm-hmm. And people were like, no. And other people are like, no, this is that thing, that historic thing called movie money.
Movie money is important. And then other people got a hold of the script.
Yes.
And we're like, this is bloody and this is evil.
Now, they were going to have a meeting, and it was going to be the second day of shooting that
Yep.
the meeting occurs. And Wes is like, I don't have time for a meeting. I'm going to go shoot Casey Becker's death. Let me know how this pans out.
Find me a cover location if this doesn't work out.
Yes.
Which, history repeating itself, ultimately. Because this is the same thing that happened at first with the high school they were shooting fucking Nightmare on Elm Street in.
Yep.
So, here we are. Wes Craven cannot do high school sequences without parents flipping the fuck out. And it wasn't even the parents. It was the school. Well, I mean, school board's made up of parents, but still.
The student body was doing write-ins.
Yeah, they wanted the movie there.
They're like, Wes Craven is shooting a movie here.
It's a movie.
Do you
There
know
will
how
be actors in our high school.
And do you know how much money?
Drew Barrymore's in this movie.
Do you know how much money this brings in? Do you know how much money movies bring into the local economy? Don't you want that? Don't you want the increased tax dollars? Doesn't this sound like a great thing? Wes Craven.
Nope.
Blood.
He's
Blood.
He's the murder man. So they said no. And
After saying yes.
And Miramax and Marion Madalena, who's the producer, went out and found another school. Alright. Fine. Fuck it. We'll build a set if we have to.
Yeah. And they end up shooting interiors in a community center.
Yep. And made it look like a school, and tell me it doesn't.
It totally looks like a school.
It looks like a school to me. Now, while they're scouting these locations in NorCal, this is where we discover the mask, which is, I love the mask story in Scream. I know I'm the guy who brings up the mask anytime we're talking about a movie. I know it's an odd thing, but I love these little cool stories. So Marion Maddalena, Wes's producer, like she's been Wes's producer for a long time. She's out scouting a house.
Like since Shocker.
Yeah, since Shocker. So she's doing a location scout of one of the houses of the movie. I don't know if it's one of the locations that actually makes it in the movie, but hanging on the wall is the ghost face mask. And she thinks it's the creepiest thing. And she takes a picture of it and shows it to Wes. And Wes is like, yes, we absolutely need that in our movie. That is terrifying. You are correct.
Because in the script, Kevin just says masked killer.
Yep. Well, because he was trying to keep it,
It's sellable.
Yeah. He didn't want to put too much of a stamp on it, so it'd be like, no, the writer's vision. No, he understood, like,
Need to pay rent.
you need to pay the rent. And, Michael Myers is just the shape.
So then they start, from what I understand, they start hunting down who has the copyright on this mask.
Who created this mask? First, they hire K&B to make a knockoff of the mask. And K&B makes several. And none of them work.
Yes.
And then ultimately they track it down to a company called Fun World.
Yep.
Who had made it as part of their Halloween series in like 1991 or 1992. It's called The Peanut-Eyed Ghost and was created by Brigitte Slayston? I think it's Slayston. And everybody loved it, and they bought it, and they designed a whole ghostly look for the ghost-faced killer, who was not actually named Ghostface at this point. The name Ghostface is actually created by Fun World to rebrand Peanut-Eyed Ghost before this movie comes out. They're like, oh, we can't be selling something called Peanut-Eyed Ghost that was in a movie.
Particularly when there's a movie where one of the female characters calls him Ghostface.
Right. So let's just call him Ghostface. But yeah, almost just left that as Peanut-Eyed Ghost. And Bob Weinstein fucking hates the mask. So he goes to K&B and is like, I want different variations of this mask. This one looks stupid. Make me a good one. And Wes is like, no, this is what I want to shoot with. What I want to make.
I just need you to make it so that it's flexible, not a character mask for a Halloween costume.
Right.
I need Hollywood workable.
Right. And Bob Weinstein's like, no, I'm not approving that mask. What I want you to do is I want you to shoot a scene with each of these variations that I've contracted K&B to make. And Wes is like, all right, I'm game. I will shoot sequences with this other mask, and I will send you the dailies. And if you're not convinced by the time I'm done shooting this sequence with Drew Barrymore, I'll eat my hat, and we'll pick whichever one you like best, and we'll reshoot. And Bob's like, fine. I'll fund reshoots if we have to. So, K&B makes these variations. And, there are shorter versions of the mask, there are longer versions of the mask, and Wes shoots with exactly one of them.
The one that looks closest to the original.
No.
Oh, okay.
The one that looks the least like the original.
Okay.
And if you're watching, if you watch the original sequence, you'll see that there's a long mask and there's a short mask that we see in a couple of close-ups where the mask just looks a little too short. That's the one that K&B made.
Okay.
And Wes was like, all right, I shot all of this with a mask made by K&B, and I shot these insert scenes with a mask made by K&B. Which one do you like more? And Bob was like, oh, I like this one. That's in the most of the scene. And he's like, yes, that's the one K&B copied. That's the original, recast in flexible latex.
The one that I want.
The one that I wanted from the beginning. And Bob was like, well, I asked you to shoot with all 7. He's like, I shot with the one that looked good, and I shot with this other one that you asked for. And Bob never said another fucking word about the mask.
The interesting thing about this, another controversy at the exact same time, because this was for the Casey scenes.
Yes.
This is the point where they were ready to fire Wes.
Yep.
For other reasons. They were seeing the dailies outside of the mask and going, this is not the direction we want to take this movie. What are you doing? What is this long phone conversation? Why? What is going on with Drew Barrymore? This doesn't make sense. You're going to get fired, dude. So Wes is like, let me just cut everything together and show you what we're working with, okay? And then if you want to fire me, you can fire me.
Which I think is probably why he also staked the mask thing on this cut of footage.
Yeah.
He was like, if you're going to fire me already because you don't like the direction of the movie, what does it fucking matter?
So
if you don't like the mask I picked.
So he cuts together a rough cut of what is the first 13 minutes of the movie. And
he cuts together a rough cut of the first 13 minutes of the movie that almost doesn't fucking change until the movie hits the MPAA.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a tight 13 minutes that Miramax is like, no, lock that. That's perfect. Because it instantly wins Miramax execs over. They see this sequence and they're like, oh God. That's the movie you're making?
Well, you can't.
I'm so sorry.
You can't tell that from the dailies. Well, of course you can't tell it from the dailies.
It's not an assembly.
And then they don't bother Wes again on shooting stuff.
Yep. Until the end of the movie. Which, another controversy. At the end of the movie, there's an entire day of blurry dailies. Yes. That DP gets fired.
Yeah, but that's not really Miramax hounding Wes.
No, it is Miramax hounding Wes by going, we just developed these dailies. What the fuck just happened? Fire your camera department. And Wes is like, I don't want to fire my whole camera department, but I will if I have to.
Yeah.
Hey, fire the camera department. Well, if you fire them, you have to fire me too. Okay, bye.
Sorry.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
You just wasted a shitload of Miramax's money.
On
my movie.
On what, scene 118?
Scene 118, the longest scene in history. 21 consecutive shooting days. That's for scene 118. Scene 118 is for those of you who've never heard of it before, scene 118 is the party sequence. When they get to Stumacher's house until the end of the movie, in the script is just called party scene. And it's scene 118 because they have to keep going back to this house to shoot. And they shoot there for 21 straight nights. Not days, nights. And at the end, the cast and crew is given T-shirts that say, I survived scene 118.
Yes.
They call it the longest night in horror history.
Like, there are movies, entire horror movies that shoot in 21 nights.
Yeah. So, Santa Rosa Comedy School. I'm going through we bounced around, but we covered all the same stuff. Your notes and my notes were mostly the same. The big controversy, though, will come once the movie is shot and is submitted to the MPAA.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things along the way from script to this. Kevin once cut a lot of the violence and a lot of stuff that Wes ended up putting back in.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the script, it was excised, and Wes is like, we need this, and we need this, and we need this, and Kevin's like, but that's what I would...
But I cut that.
That's what I was told to cut.
And Wes was like, no. That's important. Wes, who passed on this movie because it was too violent, which is...
And then one of the brilliant scenes in the movie Kevin was like, this doesn't work. I'm going to cut it. It's horrible. And then Wes was like, no, this scene stays in. This scene is important. It shows Sydney's relationship with her mother. And we have a scary, non-violent kill that we don't know what's happening. In the bathroom scene. Mm-hmm. Like, Kevin's like, that's stupid. It's got to go. And Wes was like, don't mess with my movie.
Yeah, no. Don't touch this. This has to stay. But the final cut of the movie is submitted to the MPAA, and it comes back with a lot of notes, and it gets edited, and it goes back, and it comes back with a lot of notes, and this process passes 17 times. Trim this 1 second piece of footage here, this 2 seconds here, this here. And it just goes back and fucking forth.
It's not that it's too much blood. It's not that it's a specific shot, Wes. Wes, it's just too intense.
Yeah. Too intense. But how do you cut for intensity? You fight. You fight and you fight for 17 rounds.
Yes.
With the fucking MPAA. And what you get is multiple different cuts of this movie. Which becomes almost, infamous for home video. Because the home video release
Each
puts
home
back...
video
Each home video release is a slightly different cut of the movie. And restores things. Like
the MPAA,
like the guts spilling out of Steve Orth.
You can keep the bloody mess, but we cannot see any organs falling down his leg.
Yep.
And then you do in the video, the home
indeed.
video.
Yeah, and that ends up being an interesting sort of cottage industry where people are actually trying to find the version of Scream they like best.
Yes.
On home video.
Now, to answer your question of how, other than fighting, how do you cut for intensity? You do something unprecedented. You have the producing entity, the head of the studio, Dimension, Bob Weinstein, because Dimension's his.
Yeah.
He goes to the MPAA.
Yep.
And says, you guys are not getting this movie. You keep sending it back for cuts. You're focusing on the horror and the blood. Guys, this is a black comedy. That's why it's funny. You know why it's funny, guys? Because it's a black comedy. And black comedies are intense.
Yeah.
And then no more problems from the MPAA.
Now, could it be that they heard the black comedy argument and were like, you know what, you're right? Or, this is 1996.
Yep.
This is the MPAA 2 years after fighting a big, long, protracted battle with Miramax over a movie called Clerks. Which is, almost exclusively about profanity.
Yes.
And Miramax dragged the MPA's name through the fucking mud. Is it possible that the MPAA was like, all right, I don't want to gear up for another fight with the Weinsteins?
I can't gear up for another. That's entirely possible. They could have bought that. Okay, it's a black comedy.
Sure.
Or it's like, God, you're right. Bob just showed up personally. That means if we keep this up in 2 weeks, Harvey's going to show up.
If we keep pushing this, once again, it's us versus the Weinsteins.
And nobody ever wins against the Weinsteins. This was a different world, people.
It's a very different world. Yeah. So they acquiesce. They do say that their last round of cuts are still required.
Yes.
But no more. We'll give it a pass. It's an R rating now. Release your film. So I can think of no other way to do this than to finally to talk about the movie.
Yeah.
which I think is the sparsest series of notes I've taken on any movie. Because, goddamn it, I'm fairly certain I know this movie by heart.
The first 13 minutes kind of plays like its own perfect short horror film.
Yes. We open on Casey Becker, and she's getting ready for her, movie date. Her boyfriend's coming over. She's making some popcorn. They're going to watch some videos. She rented a bunch of horror movies. She's got Halloween in the mix.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's all good.
Uh-huh.
It's all good. Then the phone rings. And we get that first taste of this voice on the other end of the phone. And he's kind of charming. And he seems sort of normal. And I'm sorry. I must have dialed the wrong number. And it's this conversation that just builds in intensity. And it
calls back. Why'd you dial it again?
And it gets tenser and tenser. And she keeps hanging up on him, and he calls back. You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish. Understand? And you're like, whoa, what just happened? What just happened? All right. This movie just changed gears very swiftly.
Yes.
And this voice, and that's sort of the interesting thing that you don't get in Scream 2. You don't get in Scream 3. You don't get the nuance to the phone calls from the killer. Because the killer just plays these melodic tones, draws you in, and then snaps on you. And it's very engaging in this first movie. After that sort of trick is played for the first time on Casey, and later in the movie on Sydney, we're always on 10 with Ghostface. Ghostface never comes back down to 0. He just stays in that sort of evil range. And that's sort of unfair. Because Roger Jackson, the actor who plays Ghostface, who is on set the whole time, and hidden from his castmates the whole time, calling on actual cell phones.
And, as has been stated by the producers and everything, was originally just going to be a placeholder to be dubbed in later by another actor. And then they started hearing the dailies.
An actor who had not yet been cast.
Yeah.
Like, they were going to cast up. It was going to be a name.
Yes.
And then, no, we're going to... This guy's good. This guy's really good. Because his voice is generic.
Yes.
And normal. And then it's not. What's your favorite scary movie?
I'd like to know who I'm looking at.
I'd
like to know who I'm talking to. Which is...
I saw that movie 20 goddamn times. Then you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel.
You tricked me.
And once he gets into that tone, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And the menace that you get from Ghostface all comes from that voice. Because that mask is not very terrifying on its own.
No.
I mean, I know West thought it was the right mask, but you see the ghost face. It didn't scare me. Roger Jackson's voice, the menace of whoever was placing that call, scared me. And that's where the terror and scream comes from. Not from who's under that mask, but from who's on the other end of that phone. And so he plays a little game with Casey. It's a horror movie quiz game, and at stake is the life of her boyfriend Steve, it's tied up to a chair outside, and will be gut gutted like a fish if she gets a wrong answer. And she does. I gave it away. It was the Friday the 13th question. And meanwhile, the popcorn she was making is burning away, and Ghostface tries to break into the house to get her. She's trying to run away. There's a chase scene. Parents come home. So the parents who live right down the street from the Mackenzies. So apparently this is a nexus that connects Haddonfield to Woodsboro.
We've talked about this in H2O. She sends her to the Beckers.
I know,
which is right down the street. Both set in Northern California.
Well, in that one, you could actually argue, except of course that they watch Scream 2 in the movie. Sorry.
There's this tenseness. There's
amazing
blood.
Tension. So much blood. So much gore. It's just like Wes just unleashed on this movie.
And I'm not even talking about the movie. I'm talking about this. This.
Yeah.
Like the blood coming off of Casey Becker, Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
She gets stabbed during this chase, and she's got the phone, and her parents are home, and she's choked out, and she can't talk.
And they pick up the phone and try to call the police, but Casey's still on the line. They hear her dying, and they come outside to find her hanging from a tree.
Yes.
And there is this sort of masterful cut on audio that exists in two versions of the film. I don't know if it was in the theatrical, but it was not in my first VHS copy, but it was in my second, where there is this sort of creaking noise of typing on a keyboard, almost in perfect time with Casey's body twisting a little bit before the cut.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like a rope. Like, ugh.
Yes.
Brilliant sound design. And we get an introduction to our actual hero, our heroine, in the personage of Sidney Prescott, who is writing a paper when her boyfriend just pops through a window, looking all like fucking Johnny Depp. Because he does. He looks like Johnny Depp.
And Johnny Depp pops through the window in Nightmare on Elm Street.
And he was home watching a movie, was edited for TV, decided he'd hop over and, talk about sex stuff with his girlfriend, and, they get interrupted because her dad pops into the room because he thought he heard somebody.
Because he heard somebody.
It's very real teenager here.
Yeah.
In many ways, I feel like, aside from the fact that they are perfect looking, this is the moment where we reach peak reality teenager.
Yeah.
The moments before it, we were almost there in those movies. The moments after it, we went too far.
Yeah.
Scream was the moment where we clicked, where reality and the movies collided, and this was a representation of real 1996 children, teenagers. I was one. I know. I remember these people. They didn't look like Nev Campbell, but they were close.
I remember these people. They were all my little brother's age.
Right. Exactly.
I knew a bunch of people who were teenagers at the time. I was not. I was 21.
Right.
I was in college. I have a slightly different experience watching it.
Right. Because it doesn't necessarily represent your high school life.
No, it doesn't.
It does mine. This is what high school looked like for me.
I mean, if you want to recognize what high school looked like for me, go watch Dr. Giggles.
Or Saved by the Bell.
Or definitely Saved by the Bell. I was trying to keep it within the horror genre. But yeah, go watch Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell is totally horror.
Stop!
I mean, Belding and Screech aren't horror characters.
Well,
I think there's something wrong with you.
I'll give you Screech.
All right. So Billy and Sydney talk around the fact that it's been a year since Sydney's mom died, and there's this nebulous stuff, and she's sorry because she's a little preoccupied.
I like to call this exposition less exposition.
Yes, exactly. It sets up the fact that Sydney's dad is going away on a business trip.
Yep.
So Sydney is going to be alone.
Ooh,
As all
keggers.
of this, yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Except no, not at Sydney's.
It's a shame because that house is built for a kegger.
And so is the other house.
Well, yeah.
So then the next day at school, there's this massive media circus. News trucks everywhere. Kids are getting interviewed because two of their classmates are dead.
It has the coming into the established thing with the interviews has one of my favorite Wes Craven shots out of the entirety oeuvre of Wes Craven.
Yeah.
When it's the high crane that comes down, and then suddenly you know it's a crane shot. You're watching it, and then suddenly it's not a crane shot, and the camera's moving. Because what he did is he had a Steadicam operator standing on the crane, and when the crane came down to ground level, just continued the shot, moving off of the crane. I cannot describe how beautiful this shot is. Like, it is literally one of my... It's in my top 5 Wes Craven shots of all time.
We very quickly gonna kind of introduce the world around Sydney has been kind of tilted off its axis. But we get through backstory the notion that this is the second time this has happened.
Yes.
This is exactly what happened a year ago when Sydney's mom got fucking splatter movie killed. To coin a Tatum Riley phrase. And everybody at the school has their turn being interviewed to see whether or not they know anything. This is where we first meet the sheriff, and we meet Principal Himbry and Deputy Dewey Riley.
Dum, 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 dum. Wait,
Next movie. The sheriff here is Joseph Whipp, who, if you watched A Nightmare on Elm Street, was just a deputy then.
Yep.
But now he's a sheriff. He moved up in the world. He left Springwood and moved to Woodsboro.
I gotta get away from this crazy Springwood slasher. Oh God, it's starting again.
Oh, that would be such an amazing movie, dude. Like if you were just to connect the two somehow, I would fucking love that. And the principal is it's fucking the Fonz, man. It's Henry Winkler.
Yes.
It's Principal Himbry.
Henry Winkler, who went uncredited,
Yeah.
so as to not rob attention from the young cast.
Henry Winkler is like the most giving actor on the planet, is what people will tell you.
Yes.
He's just like he'll write you letters. Like, hey, I saw you in this. I thought you were amazing. Keep up the good work. Like, he's just everybody's like Jewish uncle. And he's incredibly nice.
I really wish I had gotten a chance to talk to him when I was at a convention with him last May.
That would have been super cool. And then we get the kids off campus together, sitting around a fountain, talking about the kind of questions they got from the police. And they are as reverent to the questions they were asked as you can expect 16 and 17-year-olds to be. And by that I mean they are fucking not.
Yeah.
Did you really leave her liver in the mailbox? I heard you left her liver in the mailbox next to her spleen and her pancreas.
Did they ask you if you
like to hunt?
They asked me if I like to. They didn't ask me if I like to hunt.
Leave her alone. Live. It was a joke. Like, these kids they're kids. You believe them.
They didn't ask you if you, because a woman couldn't do this.
It takes like a man's mentality to do that.
Hello, Basic Instinct. Like, Tatum is fighting that, a chick could have done this. We've seen the movie, Basic Instinct, where the killer is the woman.
And there is no set of kids more movie literate than these kids.
They talk in movies, which is brilliant. I talk in movies.
Yes. Yeah. And it's at this moment that it's an inch away from being a little too twee.
Yeah.
You know, when Dawson does it, it's too much.
Yes.
When the kids in I Know What You Did Last Summer do it, it's too much. Scream, it's perfect. So Sydney doesn't want to stay by herself, given everything that's going on. So she's gonna go and stay over at her friend Tatum's. Tatum has to work, so Tatum's gonna pick her up after work. So Sydney goes to her incredibly large house, packs up her shit, and takes a nap on the couch. Like you do.
Yeah, you know, I've often fallen around on the couch asleep, waiting for my friends to come pick me up.
Sure. And while she waits, the sun sets, and she gets woken up by a phone call.
Tatum totally apologizes for being late. But she's going to swing by the video store because it's all about movies, folks.
Yep.
And pick up all the right moves. Because if you pause it right, you can see Tom Cruise's you-know-what.
Yep. But then the phone rings again.
Sydney thinks it's Tatum. Just skip the movie, Tatum. Come and get me.
Weird night with all the killings and everything. It's like something out of a horror movie.
Oh, Randy. Tell Tatum when she gets there. You know.
Yeah.
It's Randy. It's got to be Randy. I like that sexy thing you're doing with your voice, Randy.
And if this was Scream 4, he'd be like, I'm not fucking Randy! But it's not. It's Scream.
It's Scream.
So he's going to play with her a little bit. And we get that moment in the trope, where she recognizes what's going on and then does it anyways.
Yeah.
She calls it out. She goes outside to investigate a strange noise or something.
She explains why she doesn't like scary movies.
Yep. And then she does, instead of going out the front door, runs up the stairs. And Ghostface makes his presence known in full. Not in these, quarter shots and quick glimpses. We see the full costume, chasing Sydney through her own house, into her room, where we established in the beginning that she kind of props her closet door to block her door.
To lock it into place
To lock
so
it
it
into
won't
place.
open any further.
And then she uses her computer to call 911, which, okay, sure. Nobody would have done that. I don't know anybody who would do that.
Well, see, the thing that I've never understood is on the...
It's deaf type.
It's deaf type. Why does she have it?
No idea.
Yeah.
It's never established. So yeah. Before Ghostface is trying to bust through the door. Ghostface doesn't bust through the door. But before anything else can happen, Billy comes through the window.
Billy through the window?
And everything, he's holding his girlfriend and everything's fine, and then he drops a cell phone.
Drops a what?
A cell phone.
Those things are like magic, and they cost thousands of dollars. It's 1996.
It's expensive as fuck. And Sydney immediately recognizes that, oh my god, this guy called me. Billy could be the killer, and runs down the stairs, down to the front door, opens the front door, and there's the Ghostface staring at her. It's a mask in the hands of Deputy Dewey Riley, who screams bloody murder as soon as she screams. Which, I love Dewey. Dewey is the heart and fucking soul of this movie.
Dewey's what...
franchise.
Yes.
Okay? Not just this one. All four of them. Without Dewey, there's no Scream.
It's Deputy Dewey.
So, they arrest Billy. And a reporter arrives just in time to see Billy Loomis getting taken away and Sydney getting loaded into Dewey's car. And she's really upset, this reporter, Gale Weathers, because her cameraman, Kenny, is a little slow.
And by slow, we mean like slow. Like he is not fast in his movement.
And I don't think she also understands the realism of putting a 50-pound camera on your shoulder and running.
Talent doesn't ever.
Sure. And this is our introduction to Gale Weathers.
My name's not Jesus.
Jesus, the camera, hurry! My name isn't Jesus. Love it. And Kenny the cameraman is just... I love W. Earl Brown. I've always loved W. Earl Brown, but this movie is like the height of his career, in my opinion. We then cut to the police station. They've found this mask. They know what it is. They know where to get it. Billy is in with the sheriff and his dad. Sid is sitting at Dewey's desk. Billy gets, why do you have a what were you doing with a mobile phone? What about last night? I hear Sydney says you strolled by her place last night.
You went out last night?
It's the dialogue is tight in this movie.
The dialogue is tight. Also, as I lived through the 90s and I saw this through there is disaffected parentage.
Yeah. Well, when we call Vital Phone Comp, they got the record of every number dialed. Thanks, Hank.
We're on top of it.
The sad thing is, I could just quote the whole fucking movie, and people would be so bored. So they put Billy in lockup, and the sheriff tells Dewey to get Tatum and Sid out of there. So they go out the back door, but Gale,
with her investigative instincts,
yes, assumes that they might be going out the back door, gets down there. Before Dewey can get back with the car to load Sid and Tatum up, Gale finds Sydney, and my note is simply, bam, bitch went down.
Bam, bitch went down.
Because Sydney, after a slight little bit of provocation, just flat out decks Gale Weathers. Gale Weathers, who is the reporter who has most profited off of the death of Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mother.
Yep.
They go back to the Riley house. There's a girl bonding moment.
Bam, bitch went down.
Bam, Sid, super bitch.
There's a moment there where I fell hopelessly, endlessly in love with Rose McGowan.
It's the bunny.
It's the bunny.
And she plays with the bunny's feet.
Yes.
Yeah, it's adorable. And then the phone rings. It's for Sid. And it's, once again, the Ghostface Killer.
Who,
An innocent guy doesn't stand a chance with you.
I'm not quite sure what that means. As a viewer, I was like, I'm not quite sure what that means.
And then we have the moment where Dewey won't come out of his room. He's running behind. He gets to the phone and he picks it up, and you have this weird sort of sinister, possibly sexy, hello. So maybe Dewey's working with the killer. Spoiler alert! I'm not gonna go down this road of maybe Dewey's the killer. Dewey's not the fucking killer.
But they sure do go miles towards pointing fingers at
They
him.
really, really do. In the morning, the news reports are talking about Maureen Prescott and the person who was put away for it, a guy named Cotton Weary. And then we start getting the intimations based on the innocent guy doesn't stand a chance with you, and the news report that maybe, just maybe, Cotton Weary didn't kill Sydney's mother because Sydney was the only one who saw anything, and she was the eyewitness that got him put away. And she starts to doubt it herself. She goes to talk to Gale about it.
Gale doesn't want to talk because Gale got
Decked
punched the night before.
Nice welt, sweetie. That's
Tatum.
That's the note. I just wrote nice welt, sweetie. I just basically just wrote quotes. So Gale thinks that Sydney's, doubting herself, and, she might be able to get Cotton Weary off death row.
Well, has Cotton's story changed?
Not one word. Sorry. And an innocent guy on death row. Do you have any idea what that could do to my book sales? Like, she's not a good person.
No, she's not.
She's in fact a terrible fucking person.
She's a terrible person.
But she's believable terrible in this movie.
You know, she's good with the demographic of males 18 to 24.
I'm 25. I was 24 for a whole year. Jesus. All right, I can't just keep quoting the movie.
So she goes into they have the school thing.
She goes into school, and
confrontation
people are
with
running
Billy.
around dressed like Ghostface. Notice it's like Christmas.
Stupidity week.
Billy has been released from jail, runs into Sydney, and they have this moment where Billy's just kind of like, get over it. It's been a year. God damn it.
When my mom left.
When my mom left, I got over it. That's how the cookie crumbles. No, that's
That's stab. That's stab.
stab. If you don't know any of the shit we're talking about, I'm sorry. Go watch these movies and come back.
We'll be waiting for you.
Yeah. I didn't do that. I was in jail. Remember?
Remember? Look at my fingers with the fingerprinting stuff on it. I couldn't have called you.
Right. And then Sydney goes into the bathroom where the cheerleader and her friend are having the conversation about Sydney.
Yes.
You know, which is the most black comedy, straight out of Heather's moment in this movie.
Yes.
They leave, and then we reveal that Ghostface was in the bathroom the whole time and attacks Sydney. And then we have the moment that I think is my favorite over-the-top moment in a man's career.
Sensitive little shits.
2 of your classmates were just brutally butchered. And he
You're
is...
expelled.
It's just this amazing Principal Henry moment where he's just using these scissors to just threaten these children and cutting up the mask and like almost stabbing these teenagers before expelling them.
I love it.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. Dewey shows up because they're about to announce the curfew and that school is ending. Gale and Dewey flirt.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yes. And as everybody's leaving the school, Stu's having a party. And it's going to be intimate gathering, intimate friends. If this vixen doesn't invite the whole world, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Bring snacks, all right?
Yeah.
So Stu sends his girlfriend and his girlfriend's best friend to go get snacks for a party. It's no big deal. Principal Hembry trying on the mask, because why wouldn't you? And the only person in the school other than him is Fred, the janitor, who is Wes Craven, dressed like Freddy Krueger. And then suddenly he is killed.
Yes.
Stabbed repeatedly by Ghostface. Then we have sort of the big backstory sequence where we have Tatum and Sydney talking about everything.
Yeah.
Which leads to the shopping sequence, which leads to your favorite visual joke in this movie. My favorite visual joke in this movie. Everyone's favorite visual reference that didn't happen, but you expect that it will. Because Sheriff Burke is smoking because the stress.
I thought you quit.
And Dewey's eating ice cream. And every time the sheriff takes a drag of his cigarette, Dewey takes a bite of his ice cream. Like, it's just so perfectly timed. And then the sheriff tosses his cigarette, and the expectation is just, Dewey's going to drop that ice cream. And then he doesn't. There's an outtake where he did. It's on. I've seen the outtakes. It's there. It's fucking great. But yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yes.
And meanwhile, the girls are shopping. And apparently Ghostface is wandering around a grocery store and nobody's catching it. Like, I'm sorry. That's the moment where... This is one of the few moments where it's like, all right, you've now strained credibility. And then we have the video store sequence. where we establish that Randy is off the rails. And we have, Randy's sort of description of what the problem here is. That if the cops just watched Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everyone's
But it's a suspect.
And you have, sort of this moment where you can see that Billy and Stu are actually a pretty good team.
Yeah.
And are surprisingly threatening. Like, very much more intimidating than you expected. Like, when I look at Jamie Kennedy and Skeet Ulrich, I don't really think Jamie Kennedy is going to be intimidated by Skeet Ulrich.
No.
But he is. Because Billy's kind of, intimidating.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder why he is. And then it's party time.
Party time!
Excellent.
Wayne's World.
Dewey gives his sister and Sydney a ride to the party at Stu's house, which is way out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and he's just going to stay there and hang out. He's going to park up front. They bring the snacks. Everything's good. Dewey invites Gale to go inside and check out the party with him because Gale has showed up with her news van. Kenny, the cameraman, has rigged up a remote camera that she can set up. So she agrees to go in with Dewey. She drops the camera, sets it up. There's a 30-second delay. Then Dewey shows up again to invite Gale to go with him to investigate. There's a car went off the road somewhere around here. It's a nice night. He's got a flashlight. Why not go with him? It's cute. It's sweet.
Yeah.
And Kenny the cameraman just keeps monitoring while Gale goes off for a long walk with Dewey that, they disappear for a little bit. Tatum goes to get a beer for her boyfriend and a couple others and runs into the ghost face and gets killed in the garage by getting her head squished as she tries to escape the garage going through the cat door.
There's an interesting thing that happens while this is happening. We also come to realize that Ghostface is not like your 80 slasher icons.
Yeah.
He's not a Michael.
No.
He's not a Jason. He's not a Freddy. Tatum fights back. She starts throwing beer bottles at him.
She knocks him down.
Yeah.
She...
There's a very human aspect to Ghostface.
Very human aspect to Ghostface. But Tatum does get her head squished. And almost immediately after, Billy shows up at the party. Fascinating. Why would Billy just... He's got good timing, that Billy.
He's always showing up after shit happens.
Billy and Sydney go up to one of the bedrooms to talk. Randy describes the rules of the horror movie.
Yep, the rules. Remember, folks, back at the beginning of the podcast when I told you I was researching these things? Man, fuck you, Kevin Williamson.
Don't you know the rules? There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
And I'm not going to recite the rules, but everybody's seen this sequence. And it's important to note that this is sort of where the Halloween spark hits with me, because this last act of the movie is set to Halloween.
Yes.
They're watching John Carpenter's Halloween, and it has almost replaced the soundtrack. Marco Beltrami's music takes a back seat at times to John Carpenter's score.
Yeah.
On sequences that happen in the house. Randy gets a phone call. They found Principal Himbry. He's dead. He's hanging from the goalpost at the high school.
Ghostface likes hanging people too.
And everybody leaves the party except Randy, who is not giving up on watching his horror movies.
No.
He's also way too drunk to drive, so it's probably for the best.
Some of the other folks are too, but that doesn't stop them.
No, but Randy's sensical. He knows things that'll get you killed in a horror movie, and apparently in real life.
What I really like about this whole thing is Bob Weinstein looked at the script and said, "I don't know what's going on in this movie, boys, but we ain't had a kill in a while."
Yep.
So Kevin Williamson put in the Hembry kill, which then he's like, "Oh my God, that solves my solution on how I get everybody away from the party."
Yep.
Thank you, Bob Weinstein.
Yep. And in their fleeing of the party, these cars drive Dewey and Gale off the road.
Yep.
They have their first kiss, but they also find Neil Prescott's car wrecked in the woods. Billy and Sid have their conversation about, their life. They have sex for the first time. And then Ghostface shows up and kills Billy and chases Sid. Sid escapes through the attic window, drops down into a boat, finds her best friend dead.
Yeah. Come alive, Rachel. Come alive. Oh, wait, wrong movie.
And then Randy's watching Halloween, and he's really invested in telling Jamie to turn around. Behind you, Jamie. Which is
so
still
meta in a meta movie.
As Ghostface is coming up behind Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy. Jamie Kennedy is telling Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around because Michael Myers is behind her. It's fucking genius. It's so well constructed. Sidney makes it to the van where Kenny is. Kenny is seeing Ghostface behind Randy. So this meta thing now gets an extra layer to it.
Yeah.
And Kenny goes to step outside to see what's going on, and then he remembers, 30-second delay, and gets his throat slashed by Ghostface.
Yep.
Sidney escapes through the back of the van and goes running off. Dewey and Gale get back to the house. They split up. Dewey goes inside. Gale goes to the van to call the cops. Where she discovers that her windshield is coated in fucking blood.
So much blood.
So much blood. And we don't see Dewey again. He's clearing the room with his gun, and then we don't see him. Randy shows up at the window of Gale's car and gets hit several times with the phone that she then drops.
Phones are substantial things in the past, folks.
So this was definitely a Zach Morris phone.
Yes.
It's a big motherfucker. And she puts the van in gear and starts driving away because she is scared. And the problem is that she almost hits Sidney Prescott, and Kenny falls down off the top of the van and is sliding toward her. There's this massive accident. The van goes flipping down a hill to the exact same music, as I already stated in our previous deep dive podcast on the Halloween franchise, to the same music that the van carrying Michael Myers and Laurie Strode in Halloween H2O did. It appeared in this movie first and then was copied in that movie. Same scene, same music. With the brilliant line, "Kenny, I'm sorry, get off my fucking windshield," which I love. Which is my note, get off my fucking windshield. Sidney makes it back to the house just in time to see Dewey step out of the front door and get stabbed in the back. And then have the knife ripped out of his back by Ghostface.
Yeah.
She gets in the car and locks the door, but she doesn't have the keys to start the car to drive away. Ghostface has the keys, which is just this brilliant shot where he just taps on the glass with his knife and then dangles the keys. It's like, oh fuck, that's smart. That's smart writing.
And then he drops down out of camera frame. And she's got the doors locked.
Yes.
And like a door unlocks, and she goes to relock it, and the other door unlocks, and she goes to relock it, and this goes on, and then as you're watching, it's a front on. It's a Jeep SUV.
2-door.
And you watch the back
lift.
the back lift off of the back in the SUV.
Yeah. The hatch slowly rises.
And it's like, oh fuck, turn around. Sydney, turn around. Sid, turn around.
And then Ghostface comes in, and they have a little bit of a struggle. She gets out of the car, runs around, grabs Dewey's gun to turn around, and then Ghostface is gone. Where'd Ghostface go? And Randy comes running up out of nowhere. And Stu comes running up out of nowhere.
That's right, Stu was in this movie too.
Stu is still in this movie, folks. And Stu is saying that Randy went crazy and killed Tatum. And Randy is saying that Stu has gone crazy.
Randy's covered in blood.
Stu is not covered in blood.
Yeah.
And Sydney makes the smart choice, says, fuck you both, and locks the front door. Yeah. So Sydney's in the house by herself. Maybe there's a ghost face in there. Oh, wait, no, there's a Billy. He's alive.
He survived the stabbing.
He survived the stabbing. He's okay. He's like a stuck pig, but he's okay. Randy's pounding on the door. Billy takes the gun from Sydney so that he can protect her. Opens the door. Randy comes in. He closes the door, locks it again. And then Randy's like, Stu flipped out. He's gone mad.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
And then Billy shoots Randy in the chest. In the shoulder, really.
Anthony Perkins.
Psycho.
I got.
Is that a reference? Oh my, it is.
I got to throw an anecdote in here. I went to see it the first time 5 days after it opened, Christmas night, with my best friend, and the scene when Billy comes down covered in the blood. I turn to my best friend and I go, "That's fake blood." Mm-hmm. He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Okay, the rest of the blood in the movie, it's all fake, but that's fake blood."
Right. I mean, they call it out specifically with the why do they do that? It's too red.
Yeah.
It's to get your mind to kind of skip over that beat so you miss it.
Yeah.
But it specifically hangs a lantern on it.
Yes. I missed it when he is stabbed the first time.
Yes.
But as soon as he came down the stairs, I'm like, he's the killer.
Totally. And then we have now this prolonged reveal that Billy and Stu are the killers, and they planned this whole thing. And they started a year ago by killing Sydney's mom because she was sleeping with Billy's dad. And that's the reason that his mom moved out and abandoned him. He has a legit motive. Where, after a couple seconds earlier saying it's better when there's no motive, he then gives one. Stu, on the other hand, is just a fucking psycho.
Yes. From what I understand, Kevin went back and forth with himself and Bob about it.
Yeah.
About is no motive scarier or is direct motive scarier?
Yes.
So if the end result is I'm going to have one guy have a motive and one guy
not. Yeah. And said, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. And you get this sort of, this is the thing that Wes was like, this is why I will do this movie. Because this is a statement about the violence in movies and what violence in movies can do and what it really cannot do.
Yeah.
And that was the point. That's why he took this movie, was not just because Drew Barrymore was in it, but because he looked at it a second time and saw this sequence and was like, this is it. This is the message. After making The Hills Have Eyes, after making A Nightmare on Elm Street, this is the thing I need to say.
This is also one of the big sticking points with the MPAA.
Oh, yeah.
They did not like the idea of the killers stabbing themselves to set themselves up as the heroes.
Yes. And it's rough. And in the middle of this sort of torturous reveal, Gale shows up with a gun. And, she's going to save the day. Except she forgot to take the safety off the gun. And Billy
He knows this.
Billy is aware of this. and kicks her, knocks her down, takes the gun from her, and is about to shoot her when Stu recognizes that Sydney is no longer in the kitchen.
Houston,
we have a problem here. So they start tearing the house apart. They've stabbed each other to try to make themselves, well, Billy got stabbed once. Stu got stabbed a lot and is slowly bleeding to death. So Stu keeps Sydney on, because Sydney calls as Ghostface.
Yes.
To try to buy some time, fuck with these guys after having called the police. So Billy has to keep her on the phone so he can tear the house apart looking for her. Some of the best Stu moments are in this tiny little window of like 2 minutes.
Yes.
There's a scene where the fake blood is so slippery that he can't hang on to the phone. So there's a scene where Billy takes the phone, yells at Sydney, and just tosses it back. But Matthew Lillard as Stu cannot catch it, so it smacks him. And he just improvs. You fucking hit me with the phone, dick!
Which is what you say when your best friend hits you in the face with a phone.
Yeah. You get his response to the motive. The police are on their way.
Billy's
My
got
mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me.
Billy's got
Peer
a motive.
pressure. I'm far too sensitive to peer pressure. I love. He's so off the rails.
Yes.
Matthew Lillard is amazing in this movie. And we get in time to the sequence of Michael Myers bashing open the closet to get to Laurie Strode in Halloween. We get Billy opening up the closet where he thinks Sydney's hiding. He gets distracted for a second and looks at the TV. And Sidney Prescott, wearing the Ghostface costume, pops out with a fucking umbrella and just stabs him in the chest with it.
Yes.
It's like, whoa! Boom!
There's a look of intense pain
Yes.
on Skeet's face,
Yeah.
on Billy's face when this happens. He was wearing a protective plate on his chest that he was supposed to get stabbed in. The metal point of the umbrella missed and hit him where on a scar where he had open heart surgery. Mm-hmm. I've had open heart surgery. I have a scar, and it's very sensitive there. And if I get hit there, I can completely understand the pain on that man's face.
Yeah, totally.
And they used that cut though because it is just
Yeah.
it's what's known as a happy accident, folks.
Yeah. So after, running him through this umbrella, Stu hops in, suddenly, strong and enraged, jumps on top of her, there's biting, there's punching, she knocks a TV on him, a la, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. And then, Randy gets up, like, everything's fine, just in time to get punched out by Billy, who is also still alive, who then gets shot by Gale in the shoulder and falls down seemingly dead. And then Randy's like, hold on, this is the moment when the supposedly dead killer pops up for one final scare. And Sydney's just like, no, fuck that. Just shoots him in the head. Like, no, we're done. Not in my movie. Yeah, and we reveal that.
Oh.
We reveal that Dewey's still alive.
I just love the music as we reveal that Dewey's alive and the movie's ending and the sun's coming up.
Yeah. And Gale Weathers gets her big news moment, which is, great for her. And the movie ends as the sun is rising in the hills of Northern California. And that is the end of Scream.
So there's a huge flash cut. And then the music starts.
So yeah, that's Scream.
That is Scream.
I suspect I know the answers. Best kill.
Casey Becker.
Same here, Casey Becker. That tense 12 minutes is the best part of the whole movie.
Yep.
Sets tone for the rest of the movie, sets tone for the rest of the franchise. It's a brilliantly cut together piece. Yeah, totally. It's Casey Becker, hands down. Worst kill.
There is no worst kill.
There is a worst kill. There is. Himbree's death is the worst kill.
No, because there's that great shot that on his eye with the reflection and the knife.
That's one shot out of a pretty badly staged kill.
Don't care. It's awesome.
I know, but that's Henry Winkler's finest hour. His death scene is not.
No worst kill. Team no worst kill over here.
All right. I'll let you get away with not picking a worst kill for Scream. So yeah, that's Scream. Before we do final thoughts, you've been leading us through Financial Corner for 4 franchises now. This is number 5.
Yeah. Before I talk about Financial Corner,
Financial Corner, which is very fascinating with this movie. Because this movie, whoa, these numbers is big, yo. Compared with what we've been talking about.
So, however, so it drops, and Variety, in their article, their review when it drops, Variety says it's DOA, it's dead on arrival. This movie is not going to make any money.
Yeah, this movie's a failure. This is the last time ever that I think the teenage market is ignored.
Yes.
And yeah, that's the impact of this movie that we'll talk about in a minute.
Nobody's going to see this movie. They have made this horrible, almost deification of violence.
Yeah,
is the way the reviewers see it. Roger Ebert likes it. Gene Siskel does not.
Which is kind of amazing because Ebert and Siskel and Ebert together hated the 80s horror boom.
Yes. We talked about the dead teenager movies in other podcasts.
Yes. Now, they liked Halloween.
Yes.
They didn't like anything that came after.
Not really, no.
But it's interesting that Roger at least recognizes that there's some of that sort of same artistic value from Halloween in this movie.
He also likes that this movie is intelligently sending up the tropes that comprise the genre of which it is itself existing in.
Yes.
He saw the meta-ness.
Yeah.
He saw it for what it was.
I also see how Gene Siskel didn't give a shit about meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now, there's an interesting story about this movie. It did not start off as the #1 movie in America.
It's a sleeper hit, as they call it.
I can't think of other movies that have done this in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And this movie's now 22 years old. It kept building. Most movies drop off the next weekend and so on. This movie's second weekend outperformed its first. Its third weekend outperformed its second. So it had a nice small budget, we hit $14 million. Its final domestic take is $103 million.
Okay.
It was the #1 slasher of all time until 3 weeks ago,
when Halloween unseated it.
But that's just straight money, folks.
Right.
Adjusted, Scream still holds the #1 slot.
Well, what held the #1 slot until Scream?
Halloween.
So Halloween was unseated by Scream, and then Halloween unseated Scream.
Yes.
It's fair. It's totally fair. Yeah, all right. And, whew.
But that's adjusted.
Right.
And then Halloween just took it on it. Because adjusted to $2018, Scream is at $206 million.
Jesus.
Double its domestic take. And it had even more foreign, but we haven't talked about foreign markets before.
No, we have not discussed foreign markets. We're not going to start now, even though Scream is a unique film. So what we've got is we've got a franchise that comes along at just the right moment to point out to every media conglomerate in the world that there is a generation of underserved teenagers who are a huge, huge market that can be tapped.
We've spent years hearing about Gen X, and the last of the Gen Xers have moved out of the teenage bracket.
Yes, and
nobody's talking about what's behind them.
no,
And
because media continues to service the Gen Xers. And they're like, but that's what's important. We follow that market. It's cool. And Scream goes, oh no. If this was built for Gen X didn't fucking see this movie. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's the next generation. It's those kids you're not making content for that come to see this fucking movie. In droves.
This kind of reminds me of 16 years earlier with Friday the 13th.
Yep. And it drives a new boom, not just of horror movies, but of new content.
Youth-oriented.
Youth-oriented content. It births Buffy the Vampire Slayer on the WB. It births Dawson's Creek on the WB.
I don't want to wait.
It opens up a different style of movie making that points toward a younger demographic, and it opens the door for the creation of the WB as the market force that it is when it goes away and merges with the UPN network and becomes the CW. There's no Flash, there's no Arrow, there's none of that without Scream.
Yep.
And I think in many ways without Scream, there's probably no MCU. There's no Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because the audiences that went to see Iron Man and Captain America and those movies that are now the cornerstone of Hollywood
are 10 years out from Scream.
Right. Because Scream's success led to the green lighting of X-Men and Spider-Man, and that led the change. Scream literally changed the face of media, changed the world. And it changed my world. It introduced me to horror movies, which I would not have given two shits about. So, huge impact to this movie. I cannot think of another horror movie that had more impact, except maybe Halloween.
Yep.
And even then, I think Scream had more impact.
Yes.
Culturally. So I think it's still the number one of all time. It's still the best. It's still the most important, except maybe Psycho. Like Psycho and Scream. Psycho, Halloween, Scream, they're the era-specific
They're
lodestones.
Lodestone, and I would like to say they're exemplative of the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
Modern era beginning in 1960, if you will.
Yes. Now, the thing that this kind of points toward is I suspect that we're due for another. It's Halloween 2018, the David Gordon Green Halloween, is not our cultural innovator of this moment.
No.
Something is. What will it be? It's usually a horror film. Was it The Purge? No. Was it The Nun? No. What's next? That's the thing to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
Because something is going to take the reins.
It is already written. It is out there, and somebody else is trying to write it. It's in production somewhere.
Somewhere.
It's going to happen again. There's going to be a me out there who's taking notes and going, I'm changing it, and it's going to go see the movie and be like, I'm too late.
Mm-hmm. And oh, what it would mean to be the person who's not too late.
Yeah.
If you're working on this, best of luck. Because you could literally rewrite the face of media with a dumb little horror movie, just like Wes Craven did in 1996.
Grab the zeitgeist, ride the lightning.
Yeah, exactly. So those are my final thoughts on Scream, the epic that changed the world. I can't say enough about it, and we've already almost talked for 2 hours about Scream. Yeah. What are your final thoughts?
I wouldn't be who I am today without this movie. I'm not of the generation this movie was made for.
Yeah.
However, I am the last set of Gen X.
Yeah.
Like, as of now, Gen X ends in 75.
Yep.
This movie wasn't made for me, but I am close enough that people 10 years older than me, for them, it's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
This is my moment. It came when I was 21. Everything that Matthew said is true. Everything you said. It changed media. It changed how we looked at movies. Mm-hmm. It changed how we looked at horror movies. It changed the look of this movie.
Yeah.
This movie looks like a goddamned movie, not like a crappy little horror movie.
Yes. It changed the way we prioritized our spending in a horror movie. It showed that horror movies were, yes, they were bastions of artistry, because frankly we've always allowed the camera to do more in genre films than we do in normal films.
Yes.
But it opened up the door to say the quality, the level of production value that goes into a big drama or comedy. That's where we need to be. We need to
look like that.
Yes. We need to look like a movie.
And it did. I saw this movie 7 times in the theater.
I still regret that I never saw this one in the theater. Coming to it too late.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, Scream 2 was a fucking experience. And if just a fraction of Scream 2 was like what seeing Scream was like, holy shit, I missed out.
It was. I can't describe it. Scream 2 is an experience, but it is
pale imitation of the original.
imitation, yeah.
That's true across the fucking board. All right, so we said a lot. We expressed a lot of love. This movie is still my favorite. Like, I love Halloween. I can always come back to Scream. Sometimes Halloween just kind of just washes over me.
Yep.
And sometimes it just sits there because I know it so well. I can come to Scream and I can always get something. I can always go back to that well.
The only thing that I wish I could do is Scream all over again.
See it for the first time.
Because it was so much fun with me and my best friend.
Yeah.
We're sitting there, we're watching it in an active horror fan movies. So people are screaming and laughing at the point you're supposed to laugh, and we're going back and forth. Who's the killer? Who do you think it is? I'm like, do you think it's just one? I think it might be 3 people. He's like, it's not going to be 3. That's too many. There's no way it's going to be 3. It's going to be 1. I'm like, it might be 2. It might be 3. Yep. He's like, I got 1. I know for sure 1. And that was so. That's beyond the movie itself.
It's a fairly impenetrable mystery, even though it is painfully obvious.
Yes.
But once you see it, you can't ever experience that part of it again.
Yeah.
And that's because, I mean, when Billy came down that stairs with that blood, you're like, okay, yeah, fuck you, I knew it. You're the killer. Right. You're an asshole.
But who stabbed you?
Right. And then when Stu comes out, and you're like, holy shit, no, I liked him.
Yeah.
Changed the game. just changed the game. Yeah, love this movie still. And if the success of Halloween leads to a 5th screen, I will go see it.
I mean, I'll go see it.
Even if I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Just like I thought Hate Teen was a bad idea.
Yep.
At first, I'll still go see Sidney Prescott go out on one last adventure. As long as it's a last adventure.
Pulling for Gale Weathers to be the killer.
It'll never happen. Gale Weathers can't be the killer. We've bellied up to that bar too many times. That said, however, I think we're at a good wrap point on Scream 1.
Oh, totally.
But join us back here next time to talk about Scream 2.
Scream and scream again. Join us next time for Scream and Scream Again at the Gale Weathers Book Club. I'm Patrick J. Blanchard, your host, and I'm pleasure to roll us on out with my co-host, my brother, my friend,
Matthew J. Blanchard. Thanks for joining us, folks, and we'll see you next week. Or hear you, or you'll hear us.
Go watch Scream!
There'll be hearing involved.